Hi guys, this is Twinkie D of the Shamed Slut Diaries. I really dropped the ball on this blog, and I feel like I owe you guys an apology. And I wanted to talk to you for just a little bit about why I dropped the ball on this and what's been going on with me over the last couple of months. I started the Shamed Slut Diaries back in March because of the Sandra Fluke controversy and the attack on women's contraception. I think a lot of people don't understand how important contraception is, for a variety of reasons. And I wanted to use humor, because I've always thought ridicule and humor are really good weapons against this sort of nonsense. I wanted to use that to sort of get my message across. Do it in the style like I'm reporting to Papa Phil, or to his agent, and kind of, buy into the thing and have some fun with it. Kind of show what it would be like if you really had to answer to the government for the pills you take, where you are in your cycle, what kind of sex you're having, just these ridiculous things that somehow some of our government officials think it's their business to oversee. I wanted to have fun with this, but about the time I got through the first week, I realized it's no fun at all. And the more I put myself in the character of the shamed slut, the angrier I became. And anger is the only honest weapon I have left. My situation. The humor is, what is it they say, that it's anger with a smile, or I can't remember the exact quote. But it's anger dressed up. I'm not able to dress up my anger anymore. I know that turns a lot of you guys off. I'm really sorry about that. But I am an angry person right now. I'm a very angry woman. And I want to explain that. I want to get really serious and really kind of personal and just tell you why. By the time I got through the first week of this blog, I just realized how absolutely wrong it is for people to try to shame women for the choices that they make regarding their medical decisions and their reproduction. This idea that we're sluts because we choose to have sex is unbelievable to me. And I was born in the 70s. The 70s there were still problems, with women, the way that women were supposed to be. I was raised, you're supposed to be a little lady, and you don't have sex, and you don't do all these things. But I don't understand how we're going back to this notion that women are inept. They're mindless, irrational creatures who need to be controlled for their own good. I don't understand that. And I certainly don't understand how some of the African American pastors, as we've seen recently, are getting on this bandwagon. All you have to do is take out the word woman and put black person. Black people are all irrational and mindless, and they just can't do anything, and they need to be controlled. You would understand immediately why that's a terrible, terrible thing to say, and totally untrue. But all of a sudden, it's become okay to say that about women. First of all, I am not a slut. I don't think of myself as a slut just because I've spent most of my life enjoying sex. I think of myself as a relatively healthy human being. And every time I have rationally chosen to have sex, I haven't regretted it. I throw that word in there rationally because, as you know, I do have a mood disorder that sometimes takes away my ability to think rationally. And that has caused me problems in the past. But when I make rational choices about my sexuality, based on what I really desire, I'm not ashamed of that. And I'm not a slut. I got my first birth control pills when I was 17. And I didn't get them because I was sexually active. I got them because I was having a lot of difficulties with my period. I would go for 6, 8 weeks, no period. Then I'd have one. And then, a week or two later, just start bleeding everywhere. It became a real problem. It became such a problem that, it was like I almost had to wear a pad everywhere, because it was like, you don't know when all of a sudden you're just going to start bleeding on someone's chair. And let me tell you, that's one of those things that if you're a woman, it's like, oh God, I hope I'm not going through. So that was what prompted me to go to student health on campus and get on birth control. Why should I be ashamed of that? How does that make me a slut? It doesn't. I've used birth control during most all of my marriage because we had all decided that we don't want kids. My first husband did, but didn't. And he was definitely not a person that I would want to bring children into the world for. I mean, he was a vicious, heartless son of a bitch. My second husband and I decided that we didn't want kids. That we were too wrapped up in our own lives at the time and not financially able to do that. So we made the choice to be responsible for our reproduction. And I used birth control. Now, things are a little bit different. I'm still using birth control, but the reasons why are totally different. Maybe not completely different, since I'm still doing it not to get pregnant, but the urgency behind it's very different now. Because, as most of you know, I almost died a year and a half ago from a very severe pregnancy complication that killed my child at 23 weeks. And if I get pregnant again, I will die. It's not a maybe. It's not an if. It's a fact. And the fact is, I should have died the first time. I only had about a 10% chance of survival. And I think they had probably already pretty much given up hope. So, you have to understand where I'm coming from when I get angry. Maybe if I use words that you're not comfortable with, or, if I just seem like I'm on the attack. I hope you'll understand that I'm a woman who, when she finally did get pregnant, and and finding out was amazing, because I was in the ER, blood coming out of my nose like you wouldn't imagine. My blood pressure had severed or burst a vein, and it was very, very serious. And that's when I found out I was pregnant. That was what was causing the hypertension that burst that vessel. So they get my nose packed, which, let me tell you, is a terrible experience. And then they wheel me down for the ultrasound. And I'm just in shock. I'm thinking, how can I be pregnant? They're saying I'm like 20-something weeks pregnant. How can you be pregnant 20 weeks and not know? And I mean, how can you not know? Well, I was still wearing the same clothes. I hadn't put on any weight. I was having some heartburn. Yeah, I did have some morning sickness, but you know what? I've had problems with my intestines. I've had problems with nausea and vomiting and stuff like that my whole life. It was nothing new. Yes, I wasn't having periods, but guess what? I wasn't on birth control at the time. It's very common for me when I'm not on it to not have periods. It never crossed my mind that I might be pregnant because my husband thought he couldn't have kids. He'd been told by a doctor he suffered an injury, couldn't have kids. And so here I am on this little bed, nose packed. I'm having an ultrasound. And I'm looking at the screen and I can't figure out for the life of me what I'm looking at. My hat's off to these people who are trained to see these. I mean, it's not like these cute little 3 and 4D pictures that you see on things now. It was just It was all black and white. And it popped up there, 22 weeks, male. She said, "You're going to have a little boy, and he looks great. His heart's beating really strong." And I thought, we're going to have a son. This is incredible. And I was scared. I never thought I would be a very good mother, because of my illness. I worried about that. But this little boy was about as close to a miracle as Nathan and I had ever gotten. And there was no thought of aborting him. We wanted that child. And when Phil Bryant goes on the radio and says that people like me, my one mission is to abort children, hopefully you can understand when all I can say is, fuck you, you disgusting old man. You don't know anything. I saw my 22-week-old son on the ultrasound. Couldn't tell up from down. I just had to take her word for it. 1 week later, I was back in the same hospital in the ER, having seizures, biting through my lip, and my son was dead inside me because of a very rare condition called HELP syndrome. And basically what happened is that something in my body went terribly wrong. My blood pressure shot up to over stroke level, and all the platelets in my blood started to coagulate inside the vessels and form a nasty little net that trapped all the red blood vessels and formed clots. The pressure burst the capillaries in the placenta. My son died while I was seizing. The clots went to my liver and my kidneys. My kidneys started to shut down. And I was well on my way to death. This clotting condition is called disseminated intravascular coagulation, or DIC for short. And I understand in the medical community, they kind of have a little lingo for that. If someone has DIC, it means death is coming. Because there's so little you can do. Now, in my case, the only way to save my life was to deliver my son, who was dead. They couldn't do a C-section because I didn't have enough platelets. The platelets had become clots, so I would have bled to death. So they're giving me transfusions of plasma and platelets. They're trying to give me medication. They'd stop the seizing. I was in a coma. My kidneys were failing, and there was nothing anybody could do. And my family had already been called in, and pretty much were told to make preparations. And Nathan was so good. He had been by my bedside and was so loyal and so strong. And then, against all odds, I came back. And I don't know how to describe this, but the person who came back on that hospital bed wasn't the same person he left. Because part of me died. And I thought, it would take some time to heal. But it hasn't. It hasn't healed. Part of me is dead inside. I don't know if I'll ever get that back. The only thing that I can feel that's honest is rage. I can choose love, but I can't feel it. I can choose compassion, but I can't feel it. But I feel my rage. I feel every ounce of it. And I don't even know who I'm angry with. I don't think I'm angry with anyone for the death of my son. I mean, there's no God to blame. It's just a thing of nature. But that doesn't change the fact that I have these feelings. I'll never have a child. The one child I have is gone. I couldn't protect him. I couldn't protect myself. And so, I hope you can understand that I tried really hard to be the shamed slut. But I'm not a slut and I'm not ashamed. I'm a woman who has had to make some difficult decisions and who's had to live with some very difficult situations that I had no choice about. And yeah, it makes me really angry when my governor says that, my one mission in life is to kill children in the womb because I've killed a child in the womb. Not of my own will, but my body did it. And it destroyed my life. It destroyed my will. It destroyed everything. Everything. And there was a time when I wasn't really that angry with your average pro-life person, not the ones who are cynically using these policies to solidify their own power, but the people who really don't like abortion and can't imagine their babies and grandbabies being killed or aborted and they just want to save the cute little babies. There was a time when I had respect for that and I understood, even though I didn't really agree with their position, I understood. But here's the thing now. Those rank and file pro-lifers are coming on to Facebook. They're coming onto the newspaper sites. They're going into the churches. They're spreading in the community that they don't care about women. They don't care if you've been raped. They don't care if your dad's impregnated you, or your grandfather, or your uncle, or your cousin. They don't care if you're an old woman or a little child. They don't care if you live or die. You better make sure that you have that baby, no matter what. It reminds me of the story of the goose that laid the golden egg. It's almost like women are only valuable for these golden eggs we have inside us, these fertilized eggs. That's the only value we have, is the offspring we can produce. And just like in the old story, they're willing to tear us apart to get as many eggs out as they can. I'm worth more than the contents of my ovaries. And I'm worth more as a citizen of the United States than what they want to give me credit for being. I'm not a man's property. I am not the United States property. And I didn't come back from the dead. I didn't come here to this earth to pump out babies just so that they'll have a new generation of folks to either send off to another ridiculous war or, to put in the workforce for minimum wage or less. I'm not here to make the next generation of slaves. And I'm not here to make the next generation of soldiers. I'm here to be a free person. And I demand the same freedom that a man has. And I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. And I am in a faithful monogamous relationship, and I am not a slut. And by day 9 of this blog, I realized I wasn't even going to pretend to be. I wasn't even going to pretend it anymore. Because it left such a bitter taste in my throat, because I was so sick and tired of even just pretending I had to answer to these thugs. I'm not going to do it. I can't. I'm not. I just as soon have died on that table. Well, who was it? Patrick Henry that said, give me liberty or give me death? That's kind of how I feel. If I can't live my life as a free citizen with all the rights and privileges that everyone else has, then what the fuck use is it being alive? Why bother? So, again, I'm going to apologize for not finishing this. But I hope you understand why, and I hope you understand why my language is bad. It doesn't bother me. I know it bothers some people. You kind of know that when you read my stuff, but I've been ramping it up lately, and I've been ramping up my anger lately. But I want you to know why. I want you to know what's brought me to this point where I'm just not going to take it anymore. I'm not taking it from Phil Bryant. I'm not taking it from the goddamn AFA. And I'm not taking it from the average man or woman on the street. If they think that I am worth less than any potential life that may be in my womb, then they can go to hell. And you better believe I'm going to tell them that.